Nicholas Graham. I'm the Managing Director of Safety Risk Management Consultants, and we've put together this webinar with top labor lawyer Raymond Meneses. Raymond has been a colleague of mine for many years, and we've been chatting over the past week, and I thought it would be really good for him to be able to share his insights with everybody this afternoon. He's been following the government strategy very carefully over the past couple of days, particularly with regards to what their promises are in terms of business assistance and also what employees can do with regards to UIF, etc. So I'm going to use an article that Raymond sent me the other day just as a foundation for him to work from. Raymond, are you there?
I am. Hi there, everybody.
Excellent. Ray, take it from here. Maybe you want to give yourself an introduction, and then we can use this as a conversation between the two of us.
Great. So my name is Raymond Meneses. I'm an employment law expert. I've been working very closely with another expert in the field, Dr. Brad Barra, figuring out what to do as representatives of employers in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown that's currently underway. And we've been advising various employers. Brad's going to be speaking to the JSE fairly shortly, or various listed companies on the JSE, through the JSE, on the strategies to undertake. So yeah, we've been on top of this and found this really useful article on the Business Insider South Africa website, which sets out in some detail what can be claimed by employees whilst on lockdown from UIF, and how long that is going to continue for, and also what are the limitations. It's not an open checkbook, and certainly it's intended as a short-term stopgap measure. I'm happy to talk to that.
Perfect, Ray, go for it.
Okay, so in essence, the UIF exists to provide relief to employees who are unemployed, and there are various factors that are relevant determining what kind of money employees who are no longer employed. This is in the general terms. This is not in terms of the COVID-19 context. There are general principles that apply. How long has the person been employed? How up to date are the contributions? How much are they paid? And there's a sliding scale. Generally, UIF is designed to protect the lower income earners, and there's less protection provided for higher income earners. So in the COVID-19 context, it has issued a guideline that says UIF, in addition to its usual relief that it provides to unemployed employees, providing two forms of relief to employees who are affected by the lockdown. One is if the business or the employer is shut down and cannot work, then the employees can apply for a disaster relief payment, which will last a maximum of 3 months, and it's a flat rate of 3,500 Rand per month. That cannot be claimed in conjunction with any other UIF payment. That's option one. Either or. Option two is if the person's business has closed or hasn't closed, but there's been a reduction in income. For example, some employees are still working from home, so the business hasn't closed, but other employees are unable to work, and there's some reduction in income. We're going to walk through a number of different alternatives, what they could look like. In that context, the employee can then apply to UIF at a sliding scale in terms of an algorithm which is part of the UIF's calculations will apply, and lower earners would earn up to 60% of their basic income, usually around the 3,500 Rand mark going up, and higher earners, that's up to 45,000 Rand and above, could earn up to 38% of their income. That's 17,712 Rand a month. The concern that business has expressed, and in fact the state has expressed, is that UIF, whilst it has a whole lot of money in assets, 180 billion at last count, the process for claiming UIF usually takes time. And And on a good day, it's going to take 3 to 4 months, sometimes longer, to process a claim for UIF. And that's after you stand in queues at the various offices around the country. Here we have a context where we're not going to be having hundreds of thousands of people claiming benefits, but millions, literally millions. And the state, as presently constituted the Department of Labour, is simply not equipped to deal with that volume. There's no ways it can deal with it. The state has been talking about outsourcing some of that function to other stakeholders, bargaining councils in different sectors, and other entities to help with the backlog and to help with processing these claims that are going to come at them like an avalanche. The concern has been expressed, and we don't know how this is going to play out, that that means that there are going to be a whole lot of people dealing with a mass of claims in circumstances where there hasn't been extensive experience or training necessarily. We don't know how the systems are going to work. There's going to be a lot of data passing from one entity to other entities. So we anticipate some teething problems. Even if you were to process a claim for UIF now this month, say at the beginning of April or at the end of April, there's no guarantee of when that payment would be made. So we don't know yet what this is going to look like.
All right. Ray, maybe a good discussion. We spoke about this the other day, as in the position that a lot of employers find themselves in. So we're all on lockdown. Majority of companies are unable to work. So what the majority of employers have done is they've said to people that they are forced to take their annual leave. Once their annual leave is exhausted, they're on to unpaid leave. That would be in the majority of cases, correct?
Yes. So what many employers have done is a stopgap measure, simply for the 21 days of lockdown as it's presently stated. It may be extended.
Yeah.
But for the present, many employers have said employees must take their annual leave now, and it's within the employment prerogative to do so. An employer can always require an employee to take leave over a particular time. So it said take leave if you have exhausted your annual leave, because obviously this comes out of a blue sky. People weren't anticipating this.
Yeah.
Then many employers are permitting their employees to accrue negative annual leave to a point that won't be indefinite, on the basis that when the lockdown is lifted, they will recoup that annual leave at a rate of 1.25 days per month until the entire amount is worked back effectively. And if the employee leaves prior to the working back of the negative leave accrued, then that leave calculation will be adjusted in the final salary payment in the month that the employee leaves their employ. That's what most employers are doing. I've seen several variations of that. Some employers have said, look, we'll guarantee your wages for this month, but from next month, it's anybody's bet. We don't know. Some employers are saying we'll pay 25%, we'll pay 15%, 50%, depending on what they can afford. Some employers can pay nothing. And in terms of scenario 2, option 2 that I described earlier, the idea is that UIF would pay a difference on a sliding scale up to certain limits of the difference between what the employer can pay, what the employee is claiming in terms of the UIF. So there are currently no guidelines on that. I can tell you that in terms that some of the sectors, bargaining sectors, are coming up with their own strategies. The clothing sector has come to an arrangement with organized labor, with the unions, and with the bargaining council with the state, that the employer and UIF is going to take turns paying wages on a weekly basis. And the employees in the clothing sector should, all things being equal, continue to receive their full wages over the next short while. It really very much depends on how long this is going to take. We don't know how long the lockdown is going to take, and on the other side of the lockdown, what a return to work is going to look like. It's not like after 21 days the disease has magically disappeared.
No.
We're still developing protocols for what does a return to work look like. Employers have an obligation to provide a safe working environment. That means that they have to take appropriate risks to to avoid, where possible, and using reasonable precautions, their employees contracting this disease. So even if the lockdown is lifted, what does a return to work look like? What are the criteria to be applied? And many are scrambling now, and we're looking at this quite closely. What does it look like to allow your employees to return after the lockdown? I can't imagine that it's simply going to be an en masse return without thinking through how not to undo the good of the lockdown.
Yeah, and it's going to take the demand and supply side of organizations and the country to pick up again.
Yes, absolutely. And some sectors are more heavily hit than others. I saw that EdCon the other day, EdCon CEO was speaking and saying that they are facing the most massive financial crisis, and they just don't know how they're going to pay their suppliers. And that's massive. That's a big organization. Smaller organizations have typically less cash at their disposal than the big ones do. So it remains to be seen. It's a dire situation.
So Ray, maybe the $3 million question to everybody would be the following, and I draw your attention to the lower part of the article that you sent through to me, is how do people go about applying for this small breathing space, either be it from an employee perspective or from an employer perspective? I saw down here that there was a link. Companies who have to close their doors during lockdown need to report as per this email. So there's a link that people could click on. I've sent an email through to the Department of Labor. Any idea what that's about and how people go about claiming?
Yeah, so there are two kinds of claimants, I suppose. The one is the business itself. And I see that small business owners, this is very fresh, from the Department of Small Business Development, which is a state organization, will be able to apply in the next 5 or 6 hours for relief as an SME. I'm going to quickly forward to you the link that was just sent to me by Greg Wegerly, who's one of the attendees of this webinar.
Okay.
Which will enable small businesses as businesses under 50 million rand per annum turnover, to make application for financial relief. The National Employers, it's gone through. The other employers are going to be able to also apply to the state through the Department of Labor for assistance. There are other forms of assistance offered by SARS. For example, there's going to be a lifting of penalties on compliance with, to a point, with interim corporate tax payments. There's going to be staggered relief up to 20% for PAYE over the next 4 months, of 20% of the PAYE bill on a monthly basis for the next 4 months. There are all of those things that are in place to try to help business, because the state recognizes that if the private sector collapses, there's going to be an absolute mess from every angle. Then from the employee's perspective, the employees can go onto the Department of Labor website and have a look how to fill in the application form. It's all done online. Master relief fund, that's the one-off or the monthly payment of 3,500 rand, the flat rate. That's if the business has closed and the employer is unable to pay salaries. The second form from the Department of Labor is for a claim for UIF relief, where a portion of the employee's pay is not being paid. To some extent, the employee has an election between those two, depending on the facts in play, but both of those will apply.
Ray, are you there?
Yeah, I'm looking at what you're doing on the screen there.
Yeah, so I've just brought up that link that you sent through. This is the link. Is there anything around here that we should be looking at, or is this the application document that people need to fill in?
So you simply fill it in. It's fairly simple. It's got a drop-down screen. The tags are fairly clear. make the submission. One of the difficulties I have in all of these contests is my clients are asking me, Raymond, how long is this going to take? What's the turnaround time? And the short answer is we have absolutely no idea. The state has never been in this situation before. The employers have never been in this situation before. And we simply don't know how this is going to play out. I must give credit, however, to the state for the seriousness with which they've reacted to this pandemic and to the leadership we've experienced. It's been quite remarkable, actually. It's been very good, far better than many other so-called developed countries around the world. So far they're doing well. How this is going to play out is a matter of time. We simply don't know. We do know that the infrastructure is stretched.
Yeah. What I'm also finding out there is there seems to be a lot of misinformation. So when we had a conversation with some of our employees a couple of days back, they were saying, but the government said that they're going to help businesses. Why are you guys now saying that we need to take leave or negative annual leave, etc.? So there seems to be this perception at grassroots level that the assistance given to businesses is in somewhat immediate, which obviously it isn't.
So, unfortunately, despite the president stating quite clearly that the state is going to intervene, but there are challenges to that, he's certainly not said, well, we're going to take over the responsibility for dealing with this. The state hasn't got those resources. There is an expectation we're experiencing from many workers in the various sectors that I'm advising, that somehow magically employers are going to be able to just ride this out because the state is going to pay for everything. The state doesn't have money to pay for everything, it just doesn't. And whilst there are assets being released and there are plans being made, and I think attention is being paid at the highest levels to address this as a matter of the utmost urgency, the reality is that it's going to take time, and there are limits on those resources. It's not going to be business as usual. This is going to have a significant financial impact on all businesses. And we're going to be feeling it for some time.
Sure. All right. Thanks very much. Sorry, carry on.
So, part of the challenge is the effective communication of this message to everybody. Many of the guys rely on communication from various sources who are not necessarily giving the official position. And the rumor mill flies at times like this. In times of crisis, people are I've seen stuff online that has almost made my hair fall out. It's just so outrageous and completely void of any truth. Or more dangerously, there are elements of truth and elements of outright misinformation. So it really is important to go to the source and this is my advice to my clients. Go to the source. See what the state is saying about this. There's information on state websites. We're getting fairly regular updates from the state. One or two of them have been inaccurate and have been corrected. But the state is actually communicating relatively well. And we've got to get it from the source and not from secondhand sources. Unfortunately, the rumor mill, as I've said, is going wild on this, and it's just
yeah. Ray, maybe in summary, is there anything? So if we own a small business or a large business, what would be your parting summary of advice that you could give to people in this particular time?
Okay. The first thing is don't panic. I say that because our brains are not designed to make effective, intelligent decisions in a state of anxiety and panic. So don't panic. We're all in the same boat. This too will pass. We've just got to be strategic about it, and we can't do that in a panic. Number one. Number two, this is a great opportunity for businesses to sit down and look strategically at their businesses and say, what's important? What can we cut back? What can't we cut back? What is our strategy for the next month, 6 months, year, 5 years on the other side of this to emerge not weaker but stronger? What does that look like? There's some really great material available. My partner Brad has developed a campaign on this called Stop, Think, Act. I'll make those materials available to you. I'll send you some stuff. There's some really, really great perspectives on this.
Excellent.
And finally, where possible, I think employers should be making a concerted effort to look after their two most important stakeholders, their employees and their customers. What does it look like to preserve that? If we think primarily of ourselves in this context and lose sight of those two things, we'll lose our businesses. So I think we've got to be calm, we've got to be rational, we've got to be realistic, and we're going to come out on the other side of this. Yeah. In fact, there's some really great articles. I read an article two Harvard professors the other day that spoke of how this pandemic is going to positively influence how business is done. Because what it's done is it's forced us to reassess those things which we think are necessary for business. Do we really actually need a huge expensive office? Perhaps not, because look how productive people are being from home. Do we really need to travel to different cities to have business meetings when you're conducting it effectively over the internet? So all of those assumptions are being rocked. And that's actually a great space to develop and grow and become leaner and more effective as businesses. I think in the challenge this is, and I'm downplaying, this is a massive crisis, but in the crisis, there is opportunity for us to grow and emerge stronger on the other side.
Excellent, Raymond. Thank you so much, and thanks very much for giving us your time this afternoon and sharing your wisdom with everybody. Maybe just as a parting shot, how can people get hold of you if they're looking for labor law advice to deal with you or Brad? How can they get hold of you, Ray?
Great. You can reach me on email. It's Raymond at L, that's Lima, M, that's Mike, C, that's Charlie, .org.za. I'll repeat that, Raymond at lmc.org.za. Or Brad at lmc.org.za, and we will engage and set up appropriate measures to take instructions and give advice to business. We're here to support business and help where we can.
Excellent, Ray. All right, so maybe if you can just hold on for a couple more minutes. What I'm going to do is, thanks very much. It's incredible to see so many people who have logged in to attend. What I'd like to draw your attention to, it's either going to be on the left or right-hand side of your screen, is a Q&A section. Wow, there's a whole lot of questions that have come through already. Ray, can you see the questions on the left-hand side? And maybe you could deal with answering them one by one. And if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Ray, now's the time to fire away. So question number one. Sorry, that was a test question. Okay. What can an employer do if they have been negligent in registering their employees for UIF, e.g. domestic worker? Would the employee be at risk?
The short answer is yes. The first step is obviously to regularize that as fast as possible, to get hold of UIF, registered domestic worker ASAP. There is going to be a penalty for that. And my suggestion would be that if the employer is responsible for putting the employee at risk, then that would be part of the solution of mitigating that risk. To put that in plain language, I think that means that you have to pay them some money so that they don't suffer in an unacceptable fashion over this difficult time. Because they really are the most vulnerable and at risk workers in the formal sector.
Okay, one of the questions from Dennis Posadno. I have a client who's been paying based on unearned leave, so they will get paid. This will stop them getting assistance? I think that's a question. Is it clear?
Sorry, won't you please say that entire question again?
Okay, I have a client who is paying based on unearned leave.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so they will get paid. This will stop them getting or will this stop them getting assistance?
No, it won't stop them getting assistance because it's not salary. what they're effectively doing is monetizing leave. So that shouldn't stop them from getting assistance from UIF.
Okay. Thanks, Ray. Another question from Kerry Lee van Heerden. Can employers reject annual leave applications and force unpaid leave, even if the employee has annual leave due?
The short answer is yes. But I think that would be extremely unwise. From a practical perspective, it's unwise because what you're doing is not reducing a liability on your books. Quite apart from the humanitarian component of it, you're not reducing a liability on your books, which is exactly what you want to do at a time like this. And I can understand if they're cash flow issues, and it does lie within the employer's prerogative to do so. But I think that if ultimately the matter is examined by the Department of Labour, there are going to be some raised eyebrows at that approach, considering we're all in the same crisis.
Okay. One of the other things that people have asked for is just to share the Business Insider link. So, Kerry, I've shared the link in terms of the answers. You'll see it in terms of the answers on the left-hand side. Thanks very much for the question. And I've also forwarded the link for the SMME website as well. One other question is, can an employer or employee claim UIF and then the employer pays as a top-up?
Yes, that's anticipated in the guidelines. I'll send you the guidelines now. Maybe you can share this as a link quickly. It's actually very helpful. There are elements of it that are, there's a guideline issued in terms of the Department of Employment and Labour. There are elements of it that are a little bit ambiguous, but we can speak to that. It's actually a very useful link. I've sent it through and you can put it up.
Okay, excellent. The next one there, Ray. Has anyone managed to register on the SMME site? Now, see, that's come in from Mandy at Castaway Love. Now, Raymond, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that that site is only going to be up in the next 5 to 6 hours, or functioning in the next 5 to 6. Is that correct?
That's as I understand the position, yeah.
Okay, so right.
So what I think has happened, and I've experienced this because I've been trying to get hold of UIF to ask some questions as well, is the systems are so overwhelmed and overloaded that they simply can't cope. I think the representatives or the employees at UIF and the other departments who are trying to deal with the crisis are dealing with what's in front of them, and I don't think they've managed to get to this other stuff.
All right. Excellent, Ray. And just for anybody else who's still engaged in the webinar, I've put Raymond's details down on the bottom left-hand side. So it's Raymond at lmc.org.za is his email if any of you would like to engage with Raymond directly. And Ray, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Don't break the lockdown. Unless you absolutely have to go out, don't flip and go out, really. We're seeing in real time the consequences in the United States of a slack attitude to managing this crisis from the state. And as a consequence, they've got a higher infection rate than China, for goodness sake. And they've not been dealing with anywhere near the length of time that China's been dealing with it. We all have to play our part. I've heard many stories of people going to friends' houses for braais and having parties and things like that. We simply cannot afford to do this. We all have a part to play. This is going to be with us for a while.
Cough, Raymond.
It was an innocent cough. There was spit in the back of my throat. Talking
right.
for a while. But yeah, I'm not infected, and you've got a computer between you and I, so we're good.
Good man. Raymond, thanks so much once again for sharing your valuable insights and wisdom with all of us. And thanks everybody for logging in. Raymond's details are available here on the left-hand side. Also, we've been recording this webinar and we're going to make it available on our Facebook page, on LinkedIn, and also to any of the WhatsApp groups that I'm part of. Ray, thanks once again for your time. Much appreciated. And thanks to everybody who attended.